Today, we are going to look and think about that great 17th century philosopher and the issue of time and choice. I mean Leibniz. And for me, Leibniz is the only real philosopher of that temporal paradox that befuddles us from time to time. What if I could go back in the past and change my destiny? Could I stop my parents being born? And what then? What wonderful world of paradox would enter. Now, in my more reductionist moments, I would certainly argue to you that Leibniz is the only real philosopher of those sorts of temporal paradoxes. Certainly he invents them. Yes, I would say that. For modern times he invents them. And everybody else is merely working on Leibniz's concepts. And he invents them by a very particular and remarkable move. He expends his life exploring how choices define individual times. We'll come back to that at the end. But let's start by just considering his poetry. For Leibniz, writing in the great era of the chamber orchestra and the grand orchestra, perception of a wood or a tree or a forest or a sunrise is not a thing you see at once, any more than time is a succession of nows. No, you see for a moment each leaf that is gone as it is given. You see each tree for a moment, but they exist not as clear perceptions, but the minutest of all perceptions, each one going on to the next. For those of you who do maths, remember Leibniz is the inventor of differentiation. These are like the moments that define a curve, the smallest straight lines that give it its reality. Or they are like the notes upon an orchestra, from which the melody, or perhaps the chaos, emerge. And Leibniz will say darkness, or chaos, or death is merely like when you cannot resolve a myriad notes and they press upon your brain. But most of the time, I can integrate them and bind them into a whole. But these notes would not pass if they were not interlaced with desires. Smallest lusts, smallest, minutest perceptions, as the note when it comes into your brain, fills your eyes with tears or your heart with joy, that is given, gone, and leads to the next. Our desires, then, for Leibniz, change moment upon moment, and it is that change that actually impels time forward. Now, Leibniz can make this move because for Leibniz, perception is essence and substance is our souls as perceiving things. He calls them monads and thinks of them as a place beyond place, a point so small that they do not have space, but they make space within us. I am deliberately not going too far into that metaphysics, which is in many ways problematic perhaps for a true scholar, but I want to make a point. Leibniz's point, then, is that desire and time ultimately are two sides of the same thing. As I evolve those minutest desires, I live through a time. And as I live in that time, I will have myself those desires, if you like, integrated into one desire, or another, or another. And this, he says, is what really matters. And it's certainly what matters to us now. It is that idea of choice. You see, for Leibniz, you must always choose what you desire most. There is no anything else, no get-out clause on that. There's no free will, if you like, insofar as you make your choice. But if you just wait, if you wait a moment, what your desire is changes. More than that, over the course of your life, you can cultivate those desires you want to grow up from minutest perceptions until they become noble desires that allow you to make choices for other people, to think about the world differently. True freedom, then, lies in the ability to insert a space of time in which you make your choice, and to fill that space of time with the kind of desires that will not lead you into immoral actions or pointless wars or mindless conflicts, but rather understand the world in terms of others as well, that allow you to feel it as God would feel it, Leibniz would say. All right, fair enough. So, desire and choice are not then independent from each other, fine, and they're not independent from time. Depend upon it, your freedom, Bergson will later say, quoting near enough Leibniz, although Leibniz does it always through desire. Your freedom lies in your ability to think things through, to impose a pause, a gap between cause and effect. The richer that gap, the more freedom human has. Human freedom, then, is not independent from the very passage of time, the very fleeting given, glamour and gone of emotions. And this then explains so much to me. You see, for Leibniz, those who make choices too quickly, the would-be decisive men, the great leaders who paint themselves orange and curse the world with their folly, make choices too quickly. They say, I must make a choice, do that, do that, do that. And such choices are just blind causality. They are easy to predict, easy for others to play. In the end, they are no choice at all. And they're worse than that. They cultivate the worst, the basest, the least form of desires, lauding it as somehow decisive. But the obverse, in fact the reflection, often the same people, is just as parallaxing. If you can't make a choice, if you're scared of choosing, then what? Not to make a choice in the Leibnizian world is certainly to have already made a choice. If you can't choose who your enemy is, but vacillate between an old enemy and a new, or you can't even launch a flipping political party, then in the end you are useless as a leader, and you cannot define any sort of destiny. The skill of being a human being, then, is that ability to make a choice, and not merely leave it hanging, or let it rest until somebody else makes a choice so that you can react to their choice and say, no, I didn't want that. Although other people making choices is, of course, important in our own. And sometimes, to resolve ourselves, we need that reaction. And yet, true choice lies in the ability to pause, wait for other desires to come up, sleep on it, perhaps, and then act. More than that, Leibniz says so much is at stake here. Because when you make a choice, you choose not only who you are. Once you've made a choice, you've done it. Those minutest desires are set. They become finished and done and over, and you've moved on. And so it is very hard to ever change a mind that is made up. It's not because they'll admit their logic was wrong, but because their desires are set, fixed, even right or wrong. Because the very act of making a choice changes you. It changes what you are and who you can become. Likewise, the very act of choice changes the universe you live in. For a Leibnizian universe, the universe is made up as we live it, if not as God created it, by all the choices that were made. As we navigate this world of littlest desires, a world that, of course, in itself could be in any universe, any world. It is us, then, who put it this way and then this way again. This is why choices need to be creative. They need to take time, but in the end they must be made, and you must be prepared to live in their shadow. A message I think we all need to hear, and one Leibniz would be certainly screaming at us again and again and again these strange days of ours.